Welcome back to another episode of the Philosophy of Chillin. I'm your host, Don't Let It Connect. And I don't know what to say at this point right now. Because whether you're just now watching or if you've been watching, all of that seems outlandish to me. Because this platform was essentially just something that I couldn't get out of my own brain. So it wasn't really meant for anybody, but it does have the intentions to be helpful if there is something essential that someone needs in their own journey. With that being stated, it will never cease to surprise me if someone says that they listen to these episodes weekly, daily. I don't know. It would just be outstanding to me, and I would be filled with gratitude nonetheless. So that's my intro, I guess. But with that being stated, the honestly, the topic of this episode was difficult for me to sit down and do because I'm always ever evolving. So this topic in general is something that I'm continuously growing in. And I wanted to sit down and finally talk through suppression. And it's a large umbrella. So, as always, I'm not going to go any specific way in regards to what I try to say, except for providing principles that could help in general. So, the question that I pose myself and something I wanted to understand and talk through is essentially how can one recognize the different obstacles and layers of suppression that they are experiencing while also responding to it in a healthy manner. And even when you don't, how to realign yourself to get back in alignment with the vision of yourself that you want to walk in daily. And I know it's a complex question. I know you have to sit with it. And I want to give space for that. So if anyone needs to just really marinate on it, go ahead and do so. The reason why there's been such a gap from the last episodes I've released to now, when you're seeing this, after regaining that consistency in releasing, I had to sit down with the fact that even what I am doing now is an avenue of energy being released. And it just so happens to be shown in a positive manner, which is great. But it had me sit down even further to really just ask myself, well, if what you physically do on a day-to-day is the energy investment or exchange that you choose to execute, well, when it comes to suppression and things that you don't necessarily talk about with everybody, even the things that are known publicly, how you carry its influence or level of responsibility with you daily is also intriguing because that can be a form of suppression within itself too. So how does one deal with that and then still choose to continue through the obstacles, not just presently, but ones that can happen in the future too? And going down that rabbit hole was a little scary. It always is. But as like years and experiences compound on themselves and accumulate, it really makes me sit down even further and try to contemplate, well, how do we deal with this in the current evolved state? And I'm going to backtrack just a little bit to go to the foundation of how I looked at this before speaking to what I'm presently doing and applying to the current versions of me. Um, and I started off with it a little bit. That's kind of why I fell off into a little tangent. But suppression in any form can be registered by terms of ideas, influences, or actions that are not just physically detrimental, but mentally and spiritually as well. Or not even just detrimental, but constricting. And in whatever facet that appears in your reality, those moments compound on one another outside of what is passed down to you genetically. And sometimes, even myself, I find when I'm like trying to fight through it, when it has the most like energy over me, I have, in order for me to get out of it, I have to remind myself that, for one, there's only so much power I can give to circumstances that were passed down onto me. And I can acknowledge it. Acknowledging it is the biggest thing because you also have to acknowledge that it's also your responsibility on how you wield it and control it, or, just refine it, that aspect of you. And to that point, it then becomes a question of, okay, well, what are you going to define as control? Not necessarily saying that, oh yeah, you can control all the things around you. Materialistically, no. Internally, yes. Internally, the power is in your hand. It's in your heart posture. It's in what you put your mentality to, your spirit towards. Physically, I mean, as you can see, you don't really control anything. It's really beyond you. It's between the souls around and the encounter that is happening. And you never know. So the discipline built in you is really not necessarily the only facet, but it is a key part, of learning what is best for you to do versus just what you feel that you want to do or what you want to do because you've seen it or it's just been typically, you know, around. So you just partake in it. Find your own rhythm and be confident in it. And it's a lesson that can be tricky because it is also evolving with you and what you're trying to do. So when it comes to the suppression aspects of what you're feeling, I know for me, I had to sit down and actually register, well, what does suppression feel like? And how has it actualized for me? Um, with that being stated, it's so wild because there are some examples that happen in divine alignment, and then there's some encounters to where your environment controls it. And then there are some encounters to where you know, you don't even know where it came from. You're just living it and you have to respond to it. And that can also be under environment. But there's another level of spontaneity to where you don't know what extremity you have to apply to the situation. Now, in all honesty, facing what is being registered as suppression, even creatively, professionally, personally, they all have different identifying factors, especially to situations that happen forcibly. And going back to those spaces it's so darkening. Like it can really tamper with one's soul for real, you know? And if you don't have the mindset to already be able to look at it, not hesitate with it, and then physically be able to either push past it or to register that aspect for what it is and respect it, but be controlled and disciplined enough to control how much of that energy you allow to be utilized in your responses. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole. Seriously. Um, but in a sense of why this topic was so not necessarily difficult, but it's very exposing. And again, like this platform and what it's evolving to be is in a way respected amongst different communities. And as a person who has their personal goals, having other eyes watching is not something I am not used to, but it is something that I am always evolving in when it comes to the true pressure that that can also create by being able to expand or magnify a perspective or ideology. So honestly, how to deal with feeling that you are encountering something that can feel suppressive, whether it be on any realm, like I said earlier, spiritually, physically, creatively, professionally. It can go down so many. But essentially, addressing what you register as suppressive or suppressive in whatever category. Identifying that is one thing, but then also how you digest it and what context you pull from it, whether it be what learning lessons you may see, or it may not be learning lessons, but it may be the feelings of why is this happening to me? And it can feel like defeat too, you know what I'm saying? And that's real. But at the same time, and not to say but, to negate the feeling, and at the same time, one has to realize, and something that I try to do, even though that act alone can be difficult, is to have that internal subconscious safety net of knowing, for one, your life still has purpose. So even if, you feel the way that you do, this is happening for a reason. So now you have to showcase the internal strength that you want to exude. And that only can happen when you take physical steps beyond your internal comfortability of going towards something that you recognized internally you wanted to achieve. So, however it looks for that individual is that powerful decision to say, okay, I might feel like this, but phew, let me think. Let me think about it. Because I can respond. I have the capacity to do this and respond in this manner. And by me choosing that lane, it can be dangerous because that involves actions or more specifically responses that are instantaneous. And when you do things too fast, the result is one that you can't take back, no matter what you do. So, because I've experienced situations and been around people that have had to deal with those types of consequences, you know and understand what you will and won't do. Even when you won't do something to make sure that it's protecting other people. Or will. It depends on the situation. I know. But in trying to deal with the suppression, feeling, and especially the impact of it, the impact can be detrimental, but trying to identify, then evaluating how it is actually impacting you, and this what you register to be true and how you want to respond to it, while also giving yourself the cushion to remind you in that space to take time and really register the version of you that you want to, exude. Because once you experience the causes and effects of situations, I personally am an individual that I don't have to go through it to know that my word would still uphold it. Or how do I say this better? So you know how some people learn by like physically doing it and then learning that lesson, while some people observe and learn lessons by doing that. To be strictly one is something that I challenge myself not to be confined in, because learning can happen at every level. And that is key when trying to deal with the emotions and feelings of suppression internally and externally. Knowing that you don't have to get settled in one version of things. And typically, like, I found myself just settled on, the version that benefits me. But that's not how you address real suppression, because if you're feeling something, it has to involve another contributing factor, whether that be a person, a physical environment, even like, your personal actions. Like, if you're not performing the ways that you expect you to, well, that can be my biggest trigger. I'm trying to tell you. But that's being just understanding of the expectation and the things that are going on in my brain. Regardless, all I'm saying is, if we're willing to look at all of that, it helps us better. Well, it helps us to, at least me, this is from my experience, just feel more fluid in the feeling. Even though it may feel constricting, it's also peaceful in knowing that, well, I mean, I'm not responding in ways that I would be disappointed in me. So if I'm not physically or forcibly putting any other emotions of suppression or igniting that emotion even more, or if I'm just feeling pressure in general, if I'm not feeding into it, and I'm also trying to hesitate before I respond and really get a breakdown of like what's going on, even if it's happened instantaneously, just allowing to have that subconscious net in knowing, okay, this is what I've been putting my investment into, energy and time wise. So now I have to trust my body to be able to respond in a way that if something happens instantaneously, it won't be based on actions that I would continuously or that would continuously amplify the feeling of that pressure or suppression. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. But let me not go on a tangent. Hopefully, that didn't sound like I was saying a bunch of nothing. Anyway, I have sat down with myself, and what I've found out now, being the person that I have evolved into and the version of myself that I want to continue walking into, is that you can try to suppress something all you want. Whether you know about it consciously, or it may be something subconsciously underneath. But what I do know is that energy, it doesn't just go away. It comes out in one way or another, and it will always find a way. And the divine will align how the resources that you are mentally putting your energy and investing your thoughts into right in front of you. So once they are right in front of you, the big question is, what will you do? And that suppression will always exude because it is looking for that right moment, that right time, to where if the trigger is pulled, it will explode. Kaboom. Whether it's good in a positive, healthy manner, and like, even if it's like, oh shoot, even if it's intensive energy, like it's getting put towards something. Whereas it can be on the other spectrum to where maybe somebody else it is deemed as negative, or in a negative manner, negatively. Anyway, the energy is going to be there. And currently, it's continuously applying the conscious level with what is understood subconsciously for me, and building that through the body that was given to me, and allowing that spirit to not necessarily negate, but to register the environment externally for what it is, while also making sure that internally, if I am acting in alignment with what I know is good for me to the capacity that I can given the situations around me, then I can be sure to understand that the suppressive feeling will, there's always going to be a pressure that you feel like you can't get out of. But it feels different when you're fighting something, when you can just be fluid with the pressure you're feeling and move with it, so that you can also move around it and understand where you can go to alleviate some of the pressure that you are feeling. Now, dealing with the pressure in itself is going to be mentally taxing, of course. But one thing I've had to kind of continuously fall down and get back up on is knowing that if I just keep this mentality locked in, and it's different for everybody, well, everyone's mentality is different, so there's probably a different trigger aspect for you. But for me, if I can just keep this mentality of responding better or realizing something and learning from it more, how can I utilize that consciously now that I've taken time to register it subconsciously and practice that to where it's ingrained into the discipline of how I handle my emotions. And there is no time limit on the pressure or the suppressive feeling or the traits, but if you can not beat yourself up, but support yourself through the cadence that you have to build to healthily feed back into you, well then shoot, that's that's the feeling of release that you need to be able to deal with the things that are coming. And it makes it a lot better to deal with that suppressive feeling when you're able to confidently say, like, hey, and again, this is my journey and, kind of exposing in that way. But even for me, utilizing my voice, I ran away from the opportunities to do so. And now I'm in the forefront of having to do it repetitively and journalistically to where the inquisitive nature that I have been possessing is now releasing. And whether I like it or not, there are resources in front of me that are supporting it. And it meaning creative, um, the creative confidence and accessibility, which enhances the capability. So with that having its proper proper support, now there are opportunities being created, to where there may not be the same pressure, or may not feel as suppressive in one manner versus what it may have felt like in another stage or version of your life. And as those lessons are continuously evolving, I wanted to go through this topic because this is the foundation that I'm trying to utilize as not necessarily an open landscape, but this is the principle that I'm now setting my mind frame up to then be open to other pillars that are awoken through experiences and conversations and, just learning in general, to then, have that connection to how I choose to exude my actions. So, as always, I could talk about this all day. And as y'all can see, I have been checking my phone repeatedly. Therefore, I have to go, and I know you do too. So, if you've been listening up until this point, truly, thank you. This conversation is just me trying to get how I think through the situations I've been going through and try to continue to walk on a daily. So if it's not helpful for you, hey, that's cool. But we still over here chilling, so but it's been me, Dylan, to connect, and I gotta get up out of here. Peace.